take a look at generating equivalent forms of fractions, decimals, and percents. Really, we're talking conversions, converting between a fraction, a decimal, and a percent. When given a fraction like 3/10, we can think about this tied to our place value chart when we're talking about changing it to a decimal. If we know how to read it, 3/10, when we look at our place value, the first place to the right of the decimal is the tenths place, the hundredths, and then the thousandths. So if we have tenths, then we simply have 3/10, and the 3 gets placed in that tenths column. We also have some other common fractions like 1/2. 1/2, if we can make that be out of tenths or hundredths, we can figure out where we're going to place the decimal and what our decimal will be. So I know that I can multiply by 5. 2 times 5 would give me 10. So I can make an equivalent fraction. 5/10. 2 times 5 equals 10. 1 times 5 is 5. So we have 5/10. So when we look at our place value, I would place the 5 in the tenths column. Here I've got 3/4. I don't think I can make 4 be 10 by multiplying anything because 4 times 2 is 8, 4 times 3 is 12, so that's too much. But maybe I could go larger. Could I make it be hundredths? So thinking about $1 and breaking up 100 cents into 4 pieces, I'd have 25. So I know that I can say 4 times 25 is equal to 100. So 3 times 25 would give me 75 hundredths. I can write it as 75 hundredths. So my 5 ends up in the hundredths place. Sometimes we might be faced with a fraction like 5/8, and it's not very easy to change eighths to tenths or hundredths. So we're going to have to resort to a different method to find the decimal. We can do that by using division, because remember, that fraction bar means divide. So we can say 5 divided by 8, and I know that 8, I can't get any groups of 8 out of 5, so I'm going to bring my decimal up, add a 0, and think about this as how many eighths, groups of 8, can I get out of 50? And I think that would be 6, because I know that 6 times 8 is 48. So I'm going to have to multiply 6 times 8, 48. And then I subtract because I'm doing my long division, and I end up with 2. And 8 won't go into 2, so I'm going to add another 0 and bring it down. I end up with 20. So I think to myself, I have 20. How many groups of 8 can I get out of 20? 2 times 8 is 16. 3 times 8 is 24, so that's too many. So I'm going to go with 2. 2 times 8 we said was 16. And then I would subtract and be left with 4. Once again, my 4 can't go in. I can't get any groups of 8 out of 4, so I'm going to add my 0, bring it down, and now I have 40, and I recognize right away, because that's one of my favorite facts, that 5 times 8 is 40, so 40 divided by 8 would be 5. And I already know, because it's 40, when I subtract it, it comes out 0, so I have 625 thousandths, my decimal there. So we've transferred or converted fractions to decimals 2 ways. One, by finding if we can find an equivalent fraction and make it tenths or hundredths or thousandths, or we can divide it, where we take the numerator and divide by the denominator. So 5 divided by 8 in the case of 5/8. So we talked about converting a fraction to a decimal. Once we have our decimal, we can then change it to a percent. To change to a percent, we're going to convert by multiplying by 100, because percents are out of 100 always. So let's take a look at what happens. If we multiply these numbers by 100, what do you notice happening to the decimal? Remember, the decimal is at the end of each of these numbers because they're whole numbers, but here in these decimal problems you'll see them. What do you notice about where the decimal ends up? Gone 2 places to the right. Here's my decimal starting place, and then I multiply by 100, end up with 2,000. That's right, we're going to move 2 places to the right. I started with 2/10, multiplied by 100, and ended up with 20. So that would be 20%. 1 2/10, I move it 2 places to the right, and I end up with 120%. 25 hundredths, that's like out of 100. So we're going to move it over 2 places, and we end up with 25%. So we can say that multiplying by 100 just moves the decimal place 2 places to the right. So if we had a problem like this one, 657 thousandths, and I want to convert that to a percent, all I need to do is move that decimal 2 places to the right. And when I do that, 2 places to the right, 1 place, 2 places. So it's going to place my decimal at after the 5 before the 7. So I would end up with 65 7/10, and that would be percent. 65 7/10%. 1/8 of the hamsters at the pet store are brown. Which values are equivalent to 1/8? Complete the statement below with the 2 answers that make it true. And I see that we have 3 different decimal answers and 3 different percent answers. We're looking for 2 values that are equivalent to 1/8. So if you remember our value for 1/8 as a benchmark, you may be able to pick out the decimal right away and then easily convert by multiplying by 100. But if you don't remember, you can always use division to find your decimal. So this fraction 1/8 is really saying 1 divided by 8. So let's come over and do the long division. And this is what it looks like. 1 divided by 8 gives us 125 thousandths. Be 125 thousandths. So now we need to make sure that we can change that to a percent. Remember, when we change to a percent, we want to get it out of 100. So we can do that by multiplying by 100. And remember, we talked about multiplying by 100 moves that decimal place 2 places to the right. So my decimal would be placed between the 2 and the 5. And we would end up with 12.5% or 12.5%. So we've found our values. 125 thousandths as a decimal and 12.5% or 12 5/10% are equivalent to 1/8.